Hey, runners. Welcome to this week's episode of the Fuel Run Recover podcast. I'm your host, Stephanie Natchuk, sport dietitian, certified running coach, and personal trainer. We are currently wrapped up on season 3 of the show. Thank you so much for another wonderful season. And not to worry, we will be back for season 4 in early 2026. Until then, I'm so excited to share these re-releases of the top 10 episodes from this past season. So each week we'll be dropping a new re-release from season 3 that hopefully you can catch or give another listen to. If you already heard it once, maybe you'll pick up some new gems this time around. Some of these re-release episodes are fan favorites. So these are the episodes that had the most listens and downloads from you guys, my lovely listeners and subscribers. But some of them are also my personal favorites that I just wanted to reshare. Some of the ones that if you missed the first time around, I really hope you'll tune in and give them a listen this time. I hope in these episodes you're going to find some new gems, maybe some new aha moments when it comes to your nutrition, your training, your recovery, your relationship with food and exercise, or maybe just a little bit of extra motivation to keep you running strong until we're back in 2026. And of course, if you haven't downloaded my new free resource, which is my free fueling audit for runners, definitely head over to the link in the show notes and be sure to get your copy ASAP. This is just a quick checklist that will walk you through the most common signs and symptoms of underfueling in runners and help you identify where the gaps are with your eating habits and where poor nutrition might be holding you back from reaching your full health and performance potential. So once again, head over to the link in the show notes. Definitely grab your free fueling audit. And of course, let me know your score once you're done. All right, let's dive into this week's replay. Enjoy. All right. Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of the Fuel Run Recover podcast, where we are here today to talk about a little problem that a lot of runners face. I see it a lot in the clients that I work with. I see it a lot in the way that some people, sort of struggle, publicly share about their struggles, things like that on their social media. And of course, we know that when it comes to goal setting and creating new habits, achieving new things, changing certain aspects of ourselves and doing things in a different way than what we might be used to, that can come along with challenges. And today we are going to be talking about the act of self-sabotage and how this can be the real thing that is holding you back from achieving your goals, whether those are, specific running goals that you might have, doing a certain distance race, getting a PR, doing things with your training that you haven't done before, taking those next steps to level up when it comes to your training. And of course, on the other side of things, we see this a lot with people who are wanting to change body composition, lose weight. Self-sabotage can get in the way very often, and it's typically the thing that continues to hold us back. And so if you aren't familiar, if you hear the term self-sabotage, then you're probably, you can probably put 2 and 2 together in terms of like what that is. But I want to talk really specifically about, how self-sabotage shows up in your running and kind of shows up in the running nutrition kind of goals that you might have, and how we can recognize these patterns in ourselves, recognize these behaviors, and start to change some of those tendencies, change some of those habits, change some of those behaviors so that we can actually get where we want to go. Because I think sometimes a little bit of this, it definitely can be subconscious. Like, I don't think that a lot of people set a goal and then actively take steps to try and prevent themselves from reaching that goal. It's more subtle than that. And I think it comes from a different place than setting a goal and saying, well, I don't actually want to do that thing. Like, I'm just setting this goal for no reason. Typically there's other things that are maybe interfering and kind of holding us back. So what is the definition? Like, what is self-sabotage? The first thing is recognizing that self-sabotage is basically when the actions that we're taking do not match up against the things that we are trying to achieve or the things that we say we're trying to achieve. So, like, we say we want to do one thing and our actions do not support that. So, we say that we want to, you know, reduce our risk of getting injured and we want to slow down on our easy runs. And we say that it's a goal of ours to make it through this training cycle without getting injured. So, we're going to slow down and not race all of our workouts. And then we don't do that, right? We get out there and it's like we completely forget about this thing that we're trying to achieve. We've completely forgotten about this goal that we've set and we're out there racing all of our workouts, right? And then getting hurt. And then, oh my gosh, I got hurt again. Like, why did this happen? It's like, well, we didn't do the thing that we said that we were going to do. And, when it comes to nutrition, of course, a huge one, a really, really common one is that gap between wanting to eat in a way that supports improvements in body composition. And then when it comes right down to it, not eating the way that we say we want to eat. So maybe we're skipping meals. Maybe we're not planning ahead and getting in enough protein and fiber throughout the day. Maybe we're snacking in the evening and we're consuming too much added fats or added sugars or things like that. And it's that we say we want one thing. We say that we want to change our body composition. We say that we want to lose weight, but then the actions we're taking do not reflect the goal that we've set. And this is really what happens when we are self-sabotaging ourselves. And I want to be really clear about this. This is not that we just suck and that we're lazy, we don't have any willpower. It's not to say that we just need to be harder on ourselves, because I think when we do the thing that we said we weren't going to do, or we don't do the thing that we said we're going to do, and we have this disconnect, there's enough negativity, there's enough hard feelings on ourselves, there's enough guilt, there's enough shame, there's enough, like waking up in the morning and reflecting on what you were eating the night before and just feeling terrible about it, or getting injured again and just being super hard on ourselves that, like, here we are back at square one. So I don't want this episode to be, causing you more negative self-feeling, because I think we're really, really good at that already. But what I want to do with this episode is just kind of open your eyes to what's really going on here, what's really driving this disconnect between our goals and what we say we want to achieve and our actions, and then give you some strategies to recognize where this is happening for you, where this is coming up for you in your life, and then be able to start to make the changes that you need to get moving in the right direction. And it always comes down to just that self-awareness. And like we say in nutrition all the time, we want to be approaching these things with curiosity, not with judgment. So we're reflecting, we're sitting with ourselves, we're digging deep, and we're thinking about, what's driving these behaviors for me, what is really at the core of what's going through my mind, or, what's my self-talk, what's that inner narrative telling me when I'm making these decisions, and really trying to just like dig deep and peel back those layers to understand what is the motivation behind these behaviors, but not to do it in a way that we are creating more negativity, more guilt, more shame, etc., around adding a label or a judgment to that, to say, oh, I'm so stupid. I just don't have my act together. Oh, if only I had more willpower, or if only I wasn't so weak, or if only I wasn't this, like we're taking away and we're just getting rid of all of those judgment words from our minds. And we're approaching this with curiosity, right? Why are we doing these things? What is driving this behavior? What is the motivation? What is going on behind the scenes? Things that I'm not even maybe aware of. And we're taking away any judgment or judgmental words or phrasing or anything about ourselves, and just making it about a learning opportunity, the same way that you would explore any other learning opportunity, right? It doesn't always have, there doesn't need to be an emotion, especially a negative emotion attached to it. It can just be a matter of getting curious and just digging into things and just, being able to neutrally reflect on what's happening and then use that to kind of guide the changes that we want to make. So self-sabotage
can show up in any aspect of our training, the way that we train, the way that we approach training, in our nutrition, the way that we approach nutrition, the way that we're eating, the choices we're making day to day, and those things like those recovery practices, doing too much overtraining, skipping our recovery, right? And this sort of keeps us stuck in this cycle of not making progress and having frequent setbacks and just doing the same things over and over and over again and never getting where we want to go. And so, as you're listening to this episode and kind of thinking about what I've shared so far in this episode, you might be thinking about and reflecting on some of your own behaviors, times that you have struggled to make change, times that you've struggled to reach a goal, times that you haven't been successful with what you've set out to do. And maybe you have already started to dig a little bit deeper into what might be holding you back. And this is super hard because, I know for me personally, it's challenging to kind of look in the mirror a little bit and say to yourself, do I really think that I can achieve this thing? Like, is part of what's holding me back a fear of failure, right? Especially like public failure, DNFing a race, setting out for a PR, sharing with people that you want to do this thing. You're posting about it, you're telling people about your goals, whether it's, you're running your first marathon or you want to achieve this PR or whatever it might be. There's an incredible fear of failure that can really hold us back. And so then we do things, again, this is very subtle. It's not necessarily like you're not waking up in the morning and say, okay, I'm going to go and do something that's going to stop me from having to run this marathon, right? It's more subtle than that. It's, as simple as like eating something that you shouldn't have the day before an important run or your race, so that if things don't go to plan, it's like, oh, well, like I shouldn't have eaten that the night before, so I had these GI issues. It's not my fault that it didn't really work out, but you made that choice. And it's this fear of failure that can make us do these little things that end up holding us back. But it's not us, it's the fear of doing our best, trying our best, and not being successful, right? That is so terrifying. And that's such a hard thing, is to put in all of that time, all that effort to follow the plan, to do all the things, and knowing that there's a chance that you still may not reach this goal. You're still not guaranteed that. And so holding back and doing things that sabotage us even just a little bit means that we don't that onus doesn't have to be on us. But what I want you to understand is that, this is just part of life, and this is just part of goal setting, is that nothing is ever guaranteed. And if you have people in your life who are going to be very hard on you, judge you, laugh at you, make negative like if you've got people in your life that have anything bad or negative or judgmental to say about you trying really hard and putting in the effort and doing all the things that you need to do to be successful, and maybe you don't reach the goal this time, right? This is just this one instance that you didn't reach that goal. There's always next time. There's always more that we can do. Then those are maybe people that you don't need in your life, right? If we're showing up in a certain way, trying to impress people who can't be impressed, or people who are going to say negative things or judge us or make us feel worse when we already haven't reached a particular goal, like those are relationships that we really need to reflect on and maybe move away from, because that is just, really going to cause us to hold back and really cause us to do things that are going to inevitably stop us from reaching our goals. The other thing is it's not just a fear of failure, right? Like it's not just a fear of failure, and we don't only self-sabotage because we don't think we can achieve a thing or we don't think we deserve to achieve a thing. We can also have a fear of success, right? Like once I reach this goal, like what's next, right? Our human brain loves comfort, loves familiarity, and even though we want to change, like even though the logical part of our brain wants to change and we are setting goals and we're trying to level up our performance and our mindset and we're trying to better ourselves, at the end of the day, the human brain loves routine, loves comfort, loves familiarity, loves predictability. And so anything new or different that we're trying to insert into our lives just feels uncomfortable, right? There's always a learning curve. There's always the creation of new habits and doing things differently always feels strange. It's rarely a linear thing. And so if we again go into this without judgment, without saying, well, I'm just bad at setting goals, or I just don't have motivation, or I'm bad at consistency, or whatever it might be, we want to remember that, the human brain is wired to just seek that routine and that pattern and that consistency. It's just, it takes less energy and less effort for our brain to just do things on repeat, right? And because we're always, as human beings, striving for efficiency, anything different or new, what puts us out of our comfort zone, is going to feel really uncomfortable. And then, of course, we can, at the end of the day, have a lot of limiting beliefs and negative self-talk. As I think we all struggle with this, like, it doesn't matter what level or experience level of runner you are. Like, it doesn't matter how fast you are, how slow you are, how long you've been a runner, how new you are, how much you run, how little you run. Like, I think the one thing that brings us all together as human beings is that we all can suffer from limiting beliefs and negative self-talk. And it's amazing to see people who are out here like winning Olympic medals talk about their fears and their worries about not being good enough, not being fast enough. Meanwhile, they are in the upper 0.001% of worldwide runners with how amazing they are at this sport. And they still, are laying awake at night thinking, like, what am I doing here? I don't deserve this, right? And so I think knowing that that is just one thing that really truly ties us all together is just unbelievably freeing for me. But also, what that means is that we really need to recognize these behaviors in ourselves and recognize these thoughts in ourselves, because at the end of the day, our thoughts and our beliefs are what shape our actions. So it's not enough to just say that we want to do a thing. If our internal belief system does not align with what we say we want to achieve, what we want to do, then we're going to continue to take action that is in line with our belief system. And so if we believe deep down that we can't achieve our goal, even though we say we want to achieve a goal, if really truly deep down we don't think that we can do it, we don't believe that we can do it, we will continue to take actions that stop us from doing it. Even though we've said, and we've maybe done all the right goal setting things, right? We've hired a coach, we've told people what we want to do, we've, set up accountability, we're going to the run club, we've got the training plan, like, we're doing all the right stuff. But deep down, we have to believe that we can achieve the thing, because otherwise we're not going to follow the training plan. We're not going to show up to those coaching calls ready to put in the work. We're not going to be open and honest about where we're struggling. We're not going to tell our dietitian or our running coach what we're really eating in the evenings or how we're fueling, or we're just not going to be open and honest and talk about our struggles and get the help we need if deep down we don't really think that we can achieve it. This is another huge one that I think is so common, and I see it like, I don't know. I don't think it would be crazy if I said 75% of the time in the runners that I work with, is just having the all or nothing mindset. And this is a huge, huge reason why people ultimately end up self-sabotaging their success, is they tend to come into running and tend to come into their running related goals or their weight loss goals or whatever it might be, with a lot of perfectionist tendencies and a lot of all or nothing thinking. And what this looks like is, we have one bad run, one bad workout, one bad day of eating, one bad meal, like one instance where things didn't go perfectly. and we're ready to just light the whole thing on fire and just completely abandon everything after like a small slip up or a bad week or a couple of training sessions that don't go well, or we follow a nutrition plan for like a week or two and the scale hasn't dropped yet, and so we're just ready to give up before we've even really gotten started. And I see this often, and I saw this really often in, my previous work as a dietitian, where people, really tend to struggle with weight loss and with body composition and do a lot of like yo-yo dieting and a lot of like on again, off again with their eating. Because at the end of the day, they do tend to hold a lot of all or nothing thinking and hold a lot of that all or nothing mindset when it comes to food and exercise. They are perfectionists, type A, kind of at their core. And it's very difficult to shift that mindset and shift that thinking to a more balanced approach, really embracing the concept of moderation and being able to live in a world where things are not so black and white and not so all or nothing. And that's incredibly, incredibly challenging. And if you recognize that you tend to have a lot of all or nothing thinking, a lot of perfectionism, then it wouldn't surprise me if you do find that you struggle with things like balance and moderation with your nutrition or with your running. You're someone who's like, I'm either running 100 miles a week or nothing at all. I'm running until I'm injured and I can't run. And then I'm not running at all until I can run. And then I'm only running until I get injured and I can't run. You get it, right? Or somebody who you're either eating nothing but salad and chicken, or you're eating everything and anything goes and you have just, kind of no control whatsoever when it comes to your nutrition. And if you're flip-flopping and you're kind of, bouncing back and forth between these two extremes, then it's, you get on a good path. You start to maybe see a little bit of progress, or maybe we don't even get that far to the point where we're seeing some progress. But one thing goes wrong, you get sick. You have to take a few days off of training. You miss a workout because of a late work meeting or a child who's sick, or like something happens. Something, maybe it's a little bit minor, maybe it's relatively major, but it kind of puts you off course, right? Off of that perfection, that perfect plan that you were following. And then you just abandon ship and just totally fall off with the whole thing. And, this is something that is really one of the biggest acts of self-sabotage that we can see. It's not just doing something small to, maybe take the pressure off or the onus off of not reaching a goal, but it's just, totally falling off the plan entirely, again, because of those beliefs and especially those judgments about ourselves and the way that we feel about ourselves and our relationship with ourselves, right? Feeling as though we are not worthy, we're lazy, we don't have enough willpower, right? All of these terrible things that we say to ourselves that we would never say to a friend, things that if our friend came to us and said, oh, you know what? I got a really bad cold this week and I missed a run and, oh, I just feel terrible about it. Like, what would you say to that person, right? You would say, listen, Shelly, you're being dumb. You missed one or two workouts. It's not the end of the world. You've got, I don't know, 272 other workouts this year that you're going to do. What's one or two, right? Like you can say that and you believe that truly for your friend, but for yourself, right? We're very hard on ourselves. And, if you're recognizing that and, that's something that is an issue and a challenge for you, then I'm glad you're here and you're listening to this episode, because I think that's recognizing it is really the first step in taking action. And so, when we see these things occurring and we're having these challenges of, maybe it's this internal belief system, maybe it's that we don't have a good support system with our running goals, our nutrition goals, the things that we want to change about ourselves, the things that we want to achieve, it can come down to not having a good support system around us, friends, family, whatever it might be, who kind of talk down about our goals, who externally don't think that we can achieve it, tell us they don't think that we can do it. For some people that's very motivating, right? Like, I dare you to tell me that I can't achieve something and I'm going to come back and I'm going to prove you wrong. But that comes from a place of that person having a very high belief system in themselves. And if you don't have a great belief system in yourself and someone else comes along and says, yeah, you know what, you're right, you can't. Well, if you already believe that you can't, then that's just the icing on the cake, right? We need people around us who are going to support us, uplift us, help us to see that we can achieve what we want to, but it starts with us believing that we can and then taking steps to do those things that give us the results over the long term. And then sometimes too, it can come down to, just that instant gratification and doing the things that feel good in the moment versus the things that are going to add up to long-term success. And this might come down to the way that we run, right? Taking time off, taking rest days, backing off from a lot of fast running, slowing down on our easy runs, whatever, having these really fast times, running a really high volume, or eating a certain way, right? Again, habits are hard to change. Then we're prioritizing what feels good and comfortable now versus shifting what needs to shift to have that long-term success. And so, how exactly we self sabotage our training can show up in a lot of different ways. There's a lot of different behavior specific things that we can be doing that are essentially ultimately self sabotage. And sometimes there's reasons for this. Like, again, it's not always coming from a place of like, I am coming in here to intentionally hurt myself, do something because I'm consciously trying to sabotage my goals. It sometimes is just, again, coming from this like deep core belief, these fears, these self judgments, and these things that just bubble up to the surface in sometimes very interesting ways. So it might be with our training, doing things before certain workouts that don't allow us to do the workout, right? It might be not following our training plan, having lots of excuses or lots of reasons, lots of things that why we can't follow the plan. And it comes down to maybe prioritizing other things, right? Like we've got this race coming up, it's on the calendar. We've got this training plan that we need to follow to get in these miles, to do the work, to get ready for this race. And we're not following it, right? There's always some reason, there's always something that, I don't have time or I had to do this or do that. And if we really look at it, it comes down to we're just not prioritizing it. And we can then, at the end of the day, at the end of that race, oh, well, I didn't really have time to train. I was so busy. I didn't really have time to put in all the miles. So, I didn't reach my goal because I couldn't. Instead, maybe it's a matter of I just prioritized other things over my training, over my running. And that led me to feeling more comfortable and feeling like I just had this sort of nice pre-ready excuse or reason to sort of blame this external thing that I could blame on me not reaching that goal. With our nutrition, it can be, not following our nutrition plan, not eating properly for our workouts. It might look like underfueling. It might look like overfueling. It really just depends on what we're trying to achieve. And, I see this sometimes with my clients who are struggling with low energy availability or REDS is one of the goals that they might be gaining some weight. And we might want to see the scale go up because we need to increase this person's nutrition intake. But that's a very scary thing, right? And even whether you've had an active diagnosed eating disorder or not, and have been, maybe experiencing some disordered eating thoughts, or maybe you're just underfueling because you just had absolutely no idea how much energy you needed to support marathon training, whatever the reason, eating more and seeing the scale go up is, of course, a very uncomfortable, scary thing. Maybe during your runs, during your long runs or workouts, you aren't fueling properly and you should be, right? You've had this conversation with your dietitian, you know what the recommendations are for fueling and hydration, but you're just not following those plans. And it comes down to not wanting, that sort of that fear of failure, or maybe that fear of success. It also might look like skipping your rest days. It might look like staying up too late, not prioritizing your workouts and getting enough sleep, not getting in that recovery that you need. It might look like not doing your rehab exercises. It might look like just not doing the things that help you adequately recover. So then again, it's, a way that we can protect ourselves from taking that big risk and really having that pressure on to perform on race day and achieve that thing. And so, we really, what we want to do is recognize if this is happening for us. If we find ourselves setting the same goals over and over again, we continually are having setbacks. We're getting frustrated, we're quitting, we're restarting, we're just, repeating these same patterns over and over and over again. And again, I see this with my nutrition clients so often, people who are struggling with weight loss or body composition changes, is that we just have done this so many times. And what we need to do is recognize where am I missing the mark? Where are things going off course, right? Is it that I have a fear of failure or a fear of success, right? What happens after I achieve the thing? Or maybe I've achieved the thing before and then I've gained the weight back. And now I'm just stuck in this pattern, in this cycle, because it was so hard the first time. And I'm feeling like I'm so exhausted from having to put in all that work again. And it's just, traumatized us a little bit from that weight cycling and just seeing the scale go up and down and up and down, up and down. And maybe it's that we've been setting the same, PR goal in a specific race for a long time, and we're just not getting anywhere with it because we're doing things that ultimately are not benefiting us when it comes to training. And not to say, like, if you set a PR goal and it's, a very big PR from where you're currently at, it may take you years, right? You may run that same race several times over several years to slowly improve your time and work towards a specific PR. So this is not necessarily that, like, it's not a one and done. I set this goal. It should have been like a 5-year goal. I didn't achieve it in year 1. And so I'm obviously self-sabotaging. Like, not necessarily, right? Some things do take a really long time to work towards. But if you're not making any progress and you just kind of keep quitting and restarting and quitting and restarting, then really doing some self-reflection here on what might be going on with some of these behaviors, I think is really important. And so, as I said, recognizing this is the first step. I want you to just call it out, curiosity, no judgment, and just think about and reflect on negative self-talk that you find yourself getting into, any excuses that you might be making, or things, if you're not following your plan, what is your reason for not following the plan? And just kind of getting really honest with yourself to determine, like, is this a self-sabotage behavior? Even a really kind of sly one that is me getting in my own way. And asking yourself, are the things that I'm doing moving me closer to my goal? And if the answer is no, then okay, what do I want to be doing instead? And it might be just more mindfulness, more awareness as you're moving through the day. It might be better organization and planning so that we are fitting in everything we need to do in a day, right? Because, being busy is a valid reason why we can't do everything, right? We don't all have the same 24 hours in a day. But there's a huge difference between the people who are busy, but still fit in time for their training or for the things that are really important to them. And the people who will always say, I'm too busy, and so I can't. And if you believe that you can't, then you're 100% right. You can't, right? You have to make the time, look at your calendar, look at your day, shift things around to make it happen. And nobody can do this for you. And then, thinking about your mindset when it comes to achieving your goals, and really looking at the fears that you're holding, the fears that you're carrying with you, and planning for, not thinking about not reaching your goals and what happens if you fail, but thinking beyond beyond that endpoint of that goal to looking at like what happens when I reach my goal, what comes after that, and just sort of thinking beyond it so that we're not fearful of like what comes next, but we're thinking about, well, what does come next, right? After I do this, then what? And just again, having that plan and just being prepared for whatever might come after we achieve the thing. And then to, on the opposite side of it, what if I don't achieve my goal this time around, right? What if it takes me longer? What if I do fall flat on my face, right? We've all been there, done that. Everyone's had a goal that they haven't reached. Like if you're somebody who has reached every single goal that you've ever set in your life, your goals are not challenging enough, right? You're setting goals. The bar is so low. The bar is so low. It is like not even just on the ground, it's in the ground. The bar is under the ground. Like if you've never failed at anything, I don't even know what to tell you. Like you're not a human being living on this planet, right? And so planning for failure, right? What happens if I don't achieve my goal this time around? Well, you know what? We get up, we brush ourselves off, and we try again. And we try again, and we try again. Or maybe we shift our approach. We reflect, right? We make changes. We say to ourselves, what do I need to do differently the next time around? And we get help. We get help where we need it. And we hire professionals. We, work on our mental health. We work on our relationship with food and exercise. We hire a coach, right? We do all the things that we need to do to really change the fear and the negativity that goes around fear and the negativity that we can have about not reaching a goal, and instead just always be thinking beyond that, right? The goal is not the end point, it's just a point in time. And then, really thinking about that negative self-talk and the things that we say to ourselves or the things that we believe about ourselves and working to shift those as well, right? Becoming the person that we want to be, becoming the person who achieves the things that we want to achieve. Who do we need to be? What does the person do who is already achieving our goal, right? The person who is running injury free 30, 40, 50, 60, whatever, however many miles a week, right? Doesn't matter. What is that person doing to be an injury free runner who consistently runs a certain mileage? What are they doing, right? They are someone who probably gets enough sleep. They are somebody who strength trains. They are somebody who prioritizes rest and taking rest days. They're somebody who doesn't run too fast every single workout and overtrains themselves. They are somebody who fuels properly for that volume of mileage. They are somebody who doesn't stay up until 1 o'clock in the morning scrolling on social media when they have a 5 a.m. workout plan, right? So thinking about what are the things that that person does, and then how do I become that person, right? And so it's not a matter of like, I don't believe that I can do these things, because if you don't believe you can, then you can't. But it's looking at those habits and those action steps and prioritizing those things. Now, those are small things, right? And they're going to take months, if not years, of consistency to form these new habits and do those things over time. This is not a, couple of weeks and boom, we're fixed. This is the long game. This is years in the making. And then, we of course also want to make sure that at the end of the day, we're setting goals that are working for us. So, not just looking at outcome goals, not just things like PRs or races, even necessarily, right? We don't want to make it all about racing and all about the race. Having process goals. Now, if you aren't familiar with the different types of goals, I would really encourage you to go back to episode 1 of this season 3 of the Fuel Run Recover podcast, because we actually talk in huge depth about goals, different kinds of goals, how to set goals, how to track goals, just keeping everything very front of mind so that we can prioritize those habits and those changes that we're looking to make. So we really want to shift to having not just outcome goals in our lives, but having these process goals, these action-oriented types of goals, and then having a place that we can track our progress and really just visually, check off that we've done something, right? Whether it's on paper or it's a calendar app or just someplace that we can track our progress so that we can go back, we can reflect, on how we've done. We can go back and reflect on our consistency, and then go back and reflect on maybe what needs to change if things are not going well. And if, again, if we're recognizing that part of the problem is these self-sabotage behaviors, then we can change it. We can start to correct it. We can start to move forward. But it all comes down to that awareness. And then, of course, as I said, we want to get some support, we want to get some help. And so if you are having if one of your struggles is that you don't have a really good support system, obviously the internet is a wonderful place for support. There's a lot of really wonderful places that you can go for online communities, accountability, run clubs, running groups, etc. Now, not all of these communities, not all of these spaces are always positive, right? There's a lot of elitism in running. There's a lot of, not all runners are nice people. Some runners are mean, nasty, rude, and they have a lot of opinions that are frankly bad, wrong opinions about other runners. And, we need to be very careful as runners who are looking for a positive, uplifting community that we are, calling out that behavior if we feel, moved to do so. I'm not saying that you individually need to always be getting in fights with people on the internet. It's not really my thing. But to, be reporting those types of individuals to the, necessary governing authorities on whatever social media platform we're on, and then just continuing to look for those spaces where we feel our best, and you might have to try out a few run groups. You might have to try out a few different community spaces. You might have to kind of go through this a couple of times. The first one you land on might not be the one for you, or maybe it's something that you create yourself, right? Maybe it's a little like run club that you and a friend or two just get together and go for a run. It doesn't have to be anything big or formal, but just really actively trying to find your community of support for you and your goals. And this is so, so key. It might be professionals that you work with. It might be someone who helps you with your mental health, a therapist, a psychologist. It might be your dietitian. It might be your running coach. But I love when people have support beyond just like the professionals in their lives, and really have that, friends or family or someone else that can also be a support and really help you when it comes to accountability and that internal belief system. Because I think that the more people we have around us and supporting us, and also sharing their struggles, and also, seeing them set goals and maybe sometimes not achieve them, and to just have that open line of communication about the things that we all go through as runners, spending a lot of time with people, getting out for long runs with a friend. I mean, you're chatting and having these conversations, like you go deep on this stuff. And it's so wonderful to have those opportunities to have just these really nice long conversations with friends and with other runners. You get to know people on such a deep level. So anyway, definitely professionals can help guide you when it comes to places where you might need professional support, right? Because at the end of the day, just people from your run club, they might know what works for them when it comes to training or nutrition or rehab exercises or whatever, but you need a personalized plan. But just, that general community accountability support with your goals, and just support with running and believing in yourself, there's something really wonderful about having that space too. And just remember, progress and achieving goals and all of this stuff in life isn't linear, right? We don't just wake up. I mean, nobody, right, just wakes up, sets a goal, does the thing, achieves the goal, moves on to the next thing, right? Just tick, 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 tick all across the board. That's crazy. No one gets that in life. And I think though, because when we see social media and we see what's happening, like we're always seeing people's highlight reels. And every now and again, there'll be kind of a trend that comes through where somebody will share, their struggles, stuff like that. I mean, I've participated in these trends as well, where you're kind of sharing like what's going on behind the scenes, some things that you're struggling with, that sort of idea. But we don't tend to do that all that often, and we don't see it all that often, right? It tends to be the highlight reel. It tends to be the big long runs, right? Not the short little weekday runs. Tends to be the PRs, tends to be the big races, the important stuff, right? Again, that highlight reel. And when we're surrounded by everyone else's highlight reel, it's really easy to forget that all of those individuals have had setbacks along the way too. We just don't see it because we're seeing that glossed over social media-ness that is just sharing everyone's like biggest, most positive moments. And just, don't be so dang hard on yourself. You're going to have bad days. You're going to have slip ups. You're going to have things that don't go perfectly, right? Our brain always wants to go back to what's comfortable. Our brain always wants to go back to those habits, right? Those things that we've been doing on repeat without thinking about it for years and years and years and years. And so when you go back to the thing, just don't let that one bad day or one slip up roll into a bad week, and then like a bad month, and then a bad 6 months, and then, oh my gosh, I can't believe how long it's been since I put on my running shoes, or I can't believe how long it's been since I was making my breakfast yogurt bowl, or I can't believe how long it's been since I was meal prepping my lunches. We just want to let those instances, right? Those little things not become the new norm, but just become those one-offs, and being very kind to ourselves, getting out of that all or nothing mindset is a huge, huge first step to your success in that area. All right. And so, when it comes to really helping yourself break out of self-sabotage habits and really helping yourself, you know, get free from holding yourself back from achieving your goals, just remember that, just like everything else in life, this is not set in stone. These are not things that you have no control over. Self sabotage is a pattern of behaviors that we can change, right? We can always change our behaviors. We can always choose different actions. We just need to recognize, what are we doing? What needs to change? And then make sure that we're setting ourselves up for success with what we're looking to shift. And again, the biggest thing, the number one thing that we have to do here is focus on progress over perfection, right? If we're demanding this level of perfection from ourselves that we would never expect from anyone else around us, it's too much, right? If you would expect the level of perfection that you're demanding from yourself, from your best friend, who, just like you, maybe just had a baby or has little kids at home or is working 2 jobs, or, like whatever it might be, right? Everyone's got things in life that keep them busy and can easily take precedence and take priority over this stuff that we're talking about here today. And so if you can if you would extend grace and kindness and empathy towards them, I want you to think about extending that same grace and kindness and empathy towards yourself. Change takes time. And especially when we're changing these core beliefs about ourselves, right? We're changing the things that we've been saying to ourselves, the self-talk that we've been saying to ourselves for years. It's not going to be an overnight thing. It's not going to be an overnight success. So really think about giving yourself lots of space, lots of time to make mistakes, to learn, and we're thinking about things that are going to be years down the road. We're going to be, reaping these benefits years down the road. It's not a one and done overnight solution. So I hope that this episode was helpful for you. I hope that this was something that really resonated with you in terms of recognizing where maybe you're holding yourself back from achieving your goals. And I hope that you can, take action today to stop this pattern, this cycle that you might be stuck in of self-sabotaging, and actually shift your actions towards helping you get closer to your goals. So I really hope that you found this episode helpful today. I hope that it spoke to you. I hope that it resonated with you. If you are looking for help and, looking for a really positive running community, a really positive space where there is no negativity, no shame, no judgment, lots of professional coaching and help and support, then there is a spot for you right now inside the Fuel Train Recover Club. So the Fuel Train Recover Club is my online space, my online community with my online program for runners. And this is your one-stop shop for all things running. If you're looking for help with nutrition, if you're looking for help with a training plan, if you're looking for help to optimize your recovery, if you need strength training support, if you need a meal plan, whatever it is that you're looking for, helping to improve your relationship with food and exercise. Maybe you want to improve your body composition as a runner. Maybe you're training for your very first race and you just need all the things that I just listed. You're like, yeah, Steph, all of the above. Then the Fuel Train Recover Club is exactly where you need to be. And so this program, I designed it specifically for runners, keeping in mind the nutrition strategies, the training strategies, all the things that are specific to you as a runner. Because so much of what you see out there on the internet when it comes to exercise advice or nutrition advice or even weight loss advice is not made for runners, is not made with runners in mind. And so here's a place where everything is running specific. Everything I share is for runners, specific to you and your running goals. So enrollment is open right now for the Fuel Train Recover Club. We have an annual membership or we have a monthly membership option. Both are fantastic. You get all the same benefits, all the same support, all the same access with either one. I just like to keep things flexible, give you options, give you choices, because I think that's always a great thing in life. You can find out more about the Fuel Train Recover Club at the link in the show notes. I'll make sure that I put it there for you. All right, that is it for this week's episode. Thank you so much for tuning in and joining me today as we do a deep dive on self-sabotage, how to break free of those habits and no longer let those things hold you back. All right, we will see you right back here next week. Bye for now. The information on this podcast is for educational purposes only and is not to be used or relied upon for the diagnosis or treatment of any health condition. This information does not create a client-practitioner relationship and should not be used as a substitute for professional medical advice.